Hello ladies and gentlemen, thank you for clicking on my video. Today we're going to be talking all about Guns N' Roses. And first and foremost, this video is going to be about real locations that Guns N' Roses not only practiced at, they lived, they ate, everything. We're going to try to cover as much as we can. This is going to be a very big video. The locations are the main objective, and the stories that come with it are secondary. But don't worry, I have plenty of stories to go along with these locations. So if you feel like I forgot something or a story that I forgot to tell, no, I didn't. I guarantee you I know it. But this video already is going to be so big, I can't fit everything in here. I mean, look at the length of this video. You can tell this thing took a very long time.
We're gonna start out with Sal Hudson, AKA Slash's childhood. And then
we're gonna go all the way up, and the cutoff point is going to be where Guns N' Roses recorded Appetite for Destruction. So this is not coming from Google search. This stuff is coming straight out of Slash's book. Most of it is coming straight out of Slash's book. I also listened to Duff's book as well. So 2 books is what I'm following. So I will talk about both of these books throughout this video. And sometimes their stories are just a wee bit different. I will just include a briefing of the differences as we go, as I see fit. So today we're going to start out here at Laurel Elementary School. Now this is a facility for many types of things, but there's an elementary school attached to this building. Now this campus is on Hayworth in West Hollywood. And this is where Slash meets Steven Adler. Now right behind me here is Laurel Elementary School's playground. And as you can see, it's all gated off, so we can't really get much of a view here. But this is where Slash meets Steven Adler. What Slash says is he was riding his bike around. Slash, when he was a kid, he would ride his bike all over the place. And so he was over here at Laurel Elementary School playground, and he saw a kid riding a skateboard poorly. He sees the kid fall down. He rides his bike over to the kid to make sure that he's okay. Ends up being Steven Adler. And Slash says the minute that they met, they were inseparable. They did everything together. Now, they were both 13 at the time. Now, Steven just moved to this area from San Fernando Valley, which most people just call the Valley. And if you're not from LA, basically just to give you an idea, I'm gonna show you a map, and it's right here on the north side of LA. It's basically the northern suburbs of Los Angeles. Now, it was said that Steven Adler moved to the Hollywood area because his parents were divorced and he was living with his mom in San Fernando Valley. Apparently, Steven was kind of a troubled kid and his mom just couldn't handle him anymore, so he sent Steven to go live with his dad here in the Hollywood area. Now, Slash says that the minute that they met, they would hang out every day and they would go off and ride their bikes everywhere, all over Hollywood, all over West Hollywood, just like 2 kids having a blast. They would go to music stores, they would talk about music, they both loved the music, and Steven would introduce Slash to a lot of the music that he would listen to, and they would both just sit around and enjoy music. Now, they weren't the best kids in the world. They would go around and cause some trouble. They would skip school a lot of times, and oftentimes they would steal things. And the Laurel Elementary School playground is actually down Edinburgh Avenue. Now I'm standing right here in front of Bancroft Middle High School, where both Slash and Steven went. Now mind you, they were both 13 years old and they went to junior high school together. Well, at least the days they showed up, because like I said, they would oftentimes skip school. Slash said that he was doing so well in his art classes and his music classes that his GPA was pretty solid. I don't know how to say this without triggering the YouTube sound bells, but they did do some drugs too. It was shortly after they watched a live show together that Steven said, hey, why don't we start a band? And Steven said, I'll be the guitar player, the lead guitar player, and you play bass. So he wanted Slash to play the bass. So at this point, Slash was completely on board with being the bass player. In fact, he went down to what was known as the Fairfax Music School. Now he says it was right here on the corner of Santa Monica and Fairfax Avenue, right here in West Hollywood. And it now, at least at the time he wrote the book, was a chiropractic office. Now there's no such thing here now, but your guess is as good as mine. Now if you're anything like me, you're hoping that this building right here is where the music school used to be, because it's like the coolest kid on the block. So Slash would go down to the music school and he would go in and he would talk to somebody, and then a teacher came out, someone by the name of Robert Wilson came out. Robert Wolin was his name. Slash told him, I want to learn how to play bass. He said, well, do you have a bass? Do you have a bass guitar? And Slash said, no, I don't. And he said, well, the first thing you need to do is buy a bass guitar and come back here. So he went to his grandma and asked her if she would help him out get a bass. And she said, no, here is something. And she dragged it out of the closet. She dug it out of the closet and gave him a guitar. Now, it was an acoustic guitar. It was a nylon string acoustic guitar. And that's what Slash went down to the music store. He went back to the music school and brought that. Now, Robert saw that it wasn't a bass guitar, but he restrung it for him and tuned it for him. And he started playing the guitar, Robert did. And Slash was sitting there with his mouth open, basically going, I want to learn that. And he said, so you want to learn guitar? And Slash said, yes, I want to learn guitar. That's what I want to play. And now Slash, to this day, gives credit to Steven Adler for getting him started on the road playing guitar. And so just to kind of wrap up this moment here, after junior high school, Steven Adler went back to San Fernando Valley to his mom's house to live there. So apparently he just wasn't doing very well here in school, and so he was sent back to his mom's to live during high school. Slash would go on to high school basically without Steven. Now if you wanted to check out Slash's and Steven's middle school, Bancroft Middle School, you come over here on Las Palmas Avenue. Now you'll have to forgive me because half of the time I don't know if I crossed the border of West Hollywood and came back into Los Angeles. Actually, let's ask my my AI. Judging by the map, what city am I in?
You are in Los Angeles, California.
Okay, it's Los Angeles, California. So moving on to how Slash met Izzy. Now there's not really an actual spot that I can go to because this store is long gone. So instead of showing a store or the whereabouts, most of this is gonna be me driving down Santa Monica Avenue through one of my favorite small California towns, West Hollywood. Enjoy. Now sometime after school, Slash would land himself a job at a place called the Hollywood Music Store. Now one day he was working at the store and he says in walked a guy looking like Johnny Thunders. And that person ended up being Izzy Stradlin. Izzy Stradlin was apparently looking for Slash because there was a drawing of Slash's that was circulating throughout the community that was a pretty decent drawing of Aerosmith. And he held the drawing up to Slash. And he asked in a very kind of stern way, apparently, did you draw this? And Slash looked up and said, yeah. And that's when Izzy said, I effing love this. Now this was Slash's first encounter with Izzy. Slash would invite Izzy over to his house and they would end up listening to tons of music and just talking about music. They're both guitar players, so they were talking about guitar. And then at that moment, Izzy pops out a tape and says, hey, do you want to hear my current band? And Slash says, yeah, of course I want to hear. Izzy pops it into the tape player, and Slash describes it as one of the worst things he's ever heard because the audio was so bad. But he said the one thing that he heard underneath all that mess was a guy who had a high-pitched, screeching voice. And he said that voice alone behind that messy sound was amazing. Slash thought, man, I would love to meet this guy. Okay, moving on to Slash meeting Axl, meeting in quotes, because you'll understand as the story goes on. Now, again, I don't have an exact place to show you. Slash doesn't really describe too much where the house is, but he says that it was a guest house behind another house. Slash was constantly looking for people to play with. He's been in and out of bands at this moment. Saw an ad in the papers, and this band specifically was looking for a lead guitar player. What do you know? Slash was a lead guitar player. So he answered to the ad. Now, he went up to Laurel Canyon with a girlfriend that he was dating at the time. They answered the door. Instantly, he recognized Izzy, and Izzy instantly recognized Slash. Now, Slash goes on to say that there was a guy sitting on the couch on the phone talking. And Slash said throughout the whole time he was there, that guy sat on the couch talking on the phone. Now, Slash thought to himself, I bet you that's the guy with the high screeching voice. Which it was. It was Axl. Now, Axl barely even gave Slash a nod. Slash says it was a very uneventful meeting. When they left, apparently Axl was still on the couch talking on the phone. Yeah, that was pretty much the first meeting of Axl and Slash. So right now we're at the Cheviot Hills Park here in Los Angeles. And, well, why am I here? Well, we're gonna get to that in just a second. Now, after the high school years were over and Slash was kind of having a hard time finding musicians to play with, he, out of nowhere, gets a call from Steven Adler. Now, Steven says, hey, meet me over at Cheviot Hills Park. I got something to show you. Basically, Slash wanted to know what it was. Told Slash that I've been practicing drums. And I've been practicing drums in the park. Now, apparently, Steven moved back to Hollywood, living with his grandmother. And his grandmother didn't want the loud noise in her house. Now, Steven would load up his drum set, bring him out to this park right here, and practice every day. Now, Slash came out here and met him to listen to him play his drums. And when he got here, it was already dark. It was like after hours. So Slash describes it as hearing drums off in the distance as he walks over. And as he was walking over, he saw Steven playing his drums, but all he could see was a silhouette of Steven playing the drums. Now, we can say that Steven's drumming did not bring Slash to his shanananies, but he was good enough to be in a rock band. And shortly after, when they started playing together, they thought, well, let's put an ad in the newspaper looking for a bass player and a singer. So if you wanted to come out to the park that Steven practiced his drums every night, apparently, you come out to Cheviot Hills Recreation Center, and that's 2551 Motor Avenue. And actually leave your drums at home. So after Slash and Steven put the ad into the newspaper looking for a bass player and a singer, they got quite a few calls, but there was only one call that they were actually interested in. And it was a guy from Seattle, and he played bass. And Slash got to talking to him, and sure enough, it was Duff. And they hit it off on the phone. They talked about the bands that they like. Now, Duff comes from a very punk background. He's very into punk music. That was the scene over in Seattle. But they liked enough bands together that they decided to go ahead and meet. And they met right here at Cantor's Deli. Now Slash and Steven and both of their girlfriends were sitting at a table waiting for somebody by the name of Duff to walk in to Cantor's. And in walked a really tall guy with, I believe, blue hair, short blue hair. Looked very much more like a punk rocker back then. And so they were looking at him thinking, is that him? And Slash's girlfriend yells out, "Hey, Duff." Duff turns around and sure enough, it was him. Came over, sat down, and they all started talking. Now, Slash's girlfriend was a bit on the drunk side and was asking him all kinds of questions like, are you gay? Or, you know, stuff like that. Just stuff that drunk people would ask somebody, I guess. And anyway, they all actually got along very well. And the conversation went so well, in fact, that they decided to meet at a place, a practice space, a pay-to-play practice space. And they did. And they actually all connected musically too. They were desperately looking for a singer. They had a lot of calls, but none of them were quite fit for what they were looking for. Slash, after months and months playing with these guys and not being able to find a singer, kind of got depressed about the whole thing. And he wasn't too excited about Steven, how he would a lot of times miss practice. Slash called Duff and basically told him, hey man, I think I'm gonna quit the band. And then from then on, they kind of all broke off and went their own ways. Now Mark Cantor was such a big part of Guns N' Roses' early success that Guns N' Roses would oftentimes hang out there. And in fact, there's a very famous table inside there that we're gonna look at right now. It's called the Guns N' Roses table. Very famous table for sure. Now we're inside Cantor's right here, and this is where Duff would meet Slash and Steven, and Steven's girlfriend, and Slash's girlfriend, right in here.
And this one was the Marilyn Monroe table, where she used to come out.
So this is the one where the picture was taken?
Taken, yes.
So this is the Guns N' Roses
No,
table.
it's actually that one, but they moved the picture.
Oh,
But
okay.
that one
So this is the Guns N' Roses
Yeah, and
table.
it's also the Marilyn Monroe table.
Oh, really? Both?
You
So
sit
it's
down
both?
with Martin Miller. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Enjoy it.
Thank you so much. And right behind me, where those two gentlemen are sitting, is the Guns N' Roses table. I was filming it just earlier. We'll show some background or B-roll here, but this right here is the Guns N' Roses table. Now apparently this one right here, even though the Guns N' Roses photos are right here, this is not the Guns N' Roses table. I guess they moved the photos around, so they kind of switched it up. And just for a little side note, I just want to state that Slash was actually very good friends with Mark Cantor. They grew up together. They went to high school together, and they were really good friends. And so Mark Cantor is now, I believe, the co-owner of this place, but at the time, it was his parents that owned Cantor's Deli. Slash actually contributes a lot of early Guns N' Roses success to Mark Cantor because he loaned them money, and he also gave them food when they needed food if they were hungry. after Steven, Slash, and Duff broke off, they all joined their own bands. Slash would go on to somewhat of a cover band that made a lot of money playing out around town. Duff joined LA Guns, and we'll get more into that later because very important to the lore of Guns N' Roses. And Steven went off to his own thing as well. I also want to say around this time that Slash got really tired of the band playing cover tunes, so he started trying out for other bands, and he actually tried out for Poison. They're all platinum blonde pretty boys, and Slash just felt like he just didn't fit in. Now Steven and Slash were still good friends, and they talked quite a bit, and Steven was talking about a band that was playing that night, and he said he saw the band already, and that the lead singer blows the roof off of the venue, and Slash was like, okay, let's go check him out. And the name of the band was Hollywood Rose. Now Steven and Slash would go to Gazzari's. This is Gazzari's right behind me, and this is where the band was playing. And they went inside, and sure enough, it was the band that Slash met many months before. And he said that when they started playing, that Steven, for once, was not exaggerating. The singer was blowing the roof off of the venue. He was so just charismatic and he had just high, beautiful pitch voice. And Slash described Hollywood Rose as, you know, a pretty decent band, but the two outstanding people were Izzy and definitely Axl. Slash says that Izzy was playing his guitar, just jumping all over the stage, doing a bunch of knee slides across the stage. Axl giving his all, just screaming and just hitting those notes like no other. And Slash said that it was something he's never seen before, even though the rest of the band was very mediocre, according to Slash. Now Steven somehow caught wind that Axl fired the lead guitar player that same night, and they were looking for a new lead guitar player. And Steven told Slash, you got to go down there and try out for this band. Now, because Slash has a little bit of history with them, he was hesitant. He didn't really think that it was a good idea. But you know what? He had nothing else really going on, so why not? So he did. He went down there and he tried out for the band. Now, somewhere out here on the corner of
Selma Avenue
and Highland Avenue, that Slash says that he came out for the first time to try out for Hollywood Rose. Now he describes the room that he went into as dingy, dark, kind of smelly. The carpet felt greasy, but it didn't really matter to him because he was there for one purpose and one purpose only, and that was to join a good band. Now Slash finally got to properly introduce himself to Axl, because Axl last time was on the phone, kind of ignoring the whole situation at the time. So, and Slash says that the minute that him and Axl started talking, they actually got along really well. Now Slash starts to play music with Hollywood Rose. He said that, you know, they connected musically quite well. It was during the second or third song, Izzy throws down his guitar and walks out. Now he said the rest of the band kept practicing, or kept playing anyway, and after the song was over, Slash was confused, and he looked at Axl and said, where did Izzy go? Axl then tells Slash to not to worry about it. Don't worry about it. Let's just keep playing. And so they did. They just kept playing. Now fast forward into a couple of years or so, Slash finally asked Izzy, why did you walk out like that? Why did you walk away from the band like that? And Izzy said, it's because you were replacing somebody. Axl just took it upon himself to fire him and hire Slash. Essentially, that's why he walked out. And Izzy just never came back. After Slash joined Hollywood Rose, it was shortly after that Steven Adler would also join Hollywood Rose as the drummer. Of course, this is no longer Gazzari's. It's a place called Keys, and if you wanted to come out here and see where Slash and Steven watched Hollywood Rose for the first time, you come out to 9039 Sunset Boulevard, and the closest cross street is Weatherly Drive, and it's in West Hollywood. So right now we're on Santa Monica Boulevard and we're at
5634.
Hollywood Rose would practice every day. They would come out here and practice. Now 3634 is right behind these doors right here. Now there's not too much worth mentioning other than that they used to practice right here. Basically just a practice spot for Hollywood Rose. But the one thing that is worth mentioning is Slash's and Axel's friendship. Slash says that Axel and him got along from the first meeting. They grew very close very quickly. He said that Slash says that Axel actually had a lot of insight and he really enjoyed listening to Axel, and you know, Axel's thoughts. Slash got along with Axel so much that when Axel had no place to stay, Slash was staying at his mom's around this time. We'll say circa 1984-ish. Slash would ask his mom if Axel could sleep on the couch, and his mom obliged. She was like, sure, yeah, absolutely. And that's where
Axel
the crash is, on Slash's mom's couch for many, many months. Now that all came to an abrupt end when one morning Axel slept in on the couch and Slash's grandma would watch TV around the same time every day. Now Slash's mom nudged Axel to get up and move to Slash's room if he wants to sleep more. But unfortunately, Axel was in one of his moods that Slash has spoken about many times before. Basically, Axel told Slash's grandma to f off. Now in Slash's house, and I'm sure anybody's house, you don't tell grandma to F off. When Slash got home later that day from work, Slash's mom pulled him to the side and said, hey, listen, when Axel's under my roof, you know, you don't tell grandma to F off. Slash and Axel were driving out to the rehearsal studio as usual, and Slash remembers telling Axel, you know, you can't say that to my grandmother. My mom said if you do that again, you have to leave. And I think that's a pretty reasonable stance. Now Slash says, as he was explaining this to Axel, he noticed that Axel started rocking back and forth, kind of getting more aggressive. And as Slash was driving roughly around 40 miles an hour, Axel jumps out of the car. Now Slash went up the road just a little bit, made a U-turn to come back and see if Axel was okay, but Axel wasn't there. Axel never showed up to practice that night. In fact, Slash said that Axel did not show up to practice for the next 4 days. Now he said that Axel never brought up the incident, and since Axel didn't bring up the incident, Slash never brought it up again, and it was essentially forgotten about. Now, if you wanted to come out and see Hollywood Rose's rehearsal space, it's over here at 5634 Santa Monica Boulevard, Los Angeles. Somewhere around 1984, Hollywood Rose would end up playing at the Troubadour. Troubadour has been very friendly with Guns N' Roses. In fact, they got a lot of their early start playing at the Troubadour. So anyway, Hollywood Rose plays here circa 1984, and Slash already is kind of disappointed with Hollywood Rose because he says that they've been practicing for months and months and months, and they've only played a handful of shows. So at this point going in, Slash is kind of just doubting the whole thing, and plus Axl's kind of sporadic emotional kind of roller coaster that he's always on. So they get on stage and they start playing, and Slash immediately feels like the band just isn't doing very well. On top of the band not doing very well, Axl gets into a big argument with somebody in the audience. He gets so heated and so over emotional that he actually jumps off the stage, starts fighting with the audience member. Slash was so blown away by what he was seeing that he instantly right there knew that this is over, this is done. In fact, he turns to Steven and tells him, "I'm quitting after this show. When this show is done, I quit." So needless to say, the fight breaks out, the show ends, and Slash goes up to everybody, including Axl, backstage and says, "I'm done, I'm out. I don't want to be any part of this band." Shortly after this, Axl would join LA Guns. Again, we're going to get into LA Guns in a minute. And Slash and Steve, they would all go on their own way. So if you wanted to come out here and see the Troubadour for yourself, it's at
9081.
on Santa Monica Boulevard. Closest cross street is Doheny Drive. And technically, the Troubadour is in West Hollywood, but it's on the border of West Hollywood and Beverly Hills. Now right behind me here is a pretty cool mural of Guns N' Roses. I think this is a perfect spot to power drive through some of this stuff because there's so much more information. Now I'm gonna PowerPoint a lot of this and we're gonna move quick. So, number one, Axl and Izzy are both from Indiana. They knew each other since grade school.
They both came to Hollywood in the early 80s to become rock stars.
PowerPoint number two, there were two major bands that were very important to creating Guns N' Roses. One was LA Guns and the other one was Hollywood Rose. Hollywood Rose was led by Axl Rose and Izzy, and LA Guns was led by Tracy Guns. Now everybody that knows both of those bands knew that those two bands were a revolving door between many musicians, many of the same musicians. In fact, most of Guns N' Roses has played in either LA Guns or Hollywood Rose. PowerPoint number three, after Slash left Hollywood Rose, Axl would join LA Guns. It was shortly after Axl joined LA Guns that they decided to start a whole new band. That whole new band was named by Axl Rose, called Guns N' Roses. The reason for the Guns is because of Tracy Guns, and because of Axl Rose, we have Roses. Guns N' Roses. PowerPoint number four, which probably should have been three, Tracy Guns and Slash went to the same high school. They knew each other, and they knew each other as guitar players. However, they were never very close. They were more of an acquaintance type thing. For me right here is the old Tower Records. Now we're actually not going to be talking about the old Tower Records. We're actually going to be talking about the store that was right across the street from Tower Records, which was Tower Videos, and that's where Slash worked for a little while. Apparently Axl got him the job, but that's a whole nother video. I got to be selective on my stories here. Now apparently at one time in the 80s, this used to be a Tower Video. This used to be the old Tower Video right here. We all make mistakes, right? But it is just down the road. So this is the old Tower Video. It's at 8844 Sunset Boulevard. Slash was working right here And it was Izzy, again, that walks in to talk to Slash at his job. And Izzy basically came in with a flyer, giving it to Slash, showing where Guns N' Roses, the new band that they just started. And Slash says that it was a show that was gonna happen in Orange County somewhere. And Slash says something to the effect that he was pretty jealous. I mean, he was kind of upset because he wasn't in his own band at this time. And, you know, everybody else seems like, except for Steven, everybody else seems like they have all grouped together in a new band called Guns N' Roses. Now, apparently, sometime before the show in Orange County, the bass player for Guns N' Roses at that time, he ended up leaving the band, and Axl and Izzy brought in Duff. Right after Duff would join the band is when they played over in Orange County. It was shortly after that show in Orange County that Axl fires Tracy Guns, the lead guitar player, the second guy in command. I don't know how that happened, but it was some kind of dispute, and I think Tracy Guns was A-okay with leaving the band because they were both kind of at each other's throats. Shortly after Axl fired Tracy Guns, Axl would come to Tower Videos and ask Slash if he would get together with Izzy and come up with some song ideas. And at this point, Slash really had nothing else going on. He had nothing else to do. So he's like, sure, I'll join your band. Now we're gonna bullet point through this part too because this video is getting crazy long. Slash is in Guns N' Roses. The only person that is not in Guns N' Roses at this time is Steven Adler. 1. This version of Guns N' Roses is going even better than the first version of Guns N' Roses. 2. Because Duff was from Seattle, they have decided to make a mini tour across the West Coast, and Duff was going to set up all the venues that they would play at on the way there, ending at a place called Guerrilla Gardens in Seattle. 3. The drummer at the time quit because he just did not have the time or the courage to go on a tour with a band that just started. In comes Steven Adler. 4. They got a couple good friends of theirs that had a car to drive them all the way from LA to Seattle. They rented a small U-Haul trailer to hitch to the back of the car. 5, I think. Number 5, the car made it over the Grapevine. However, right around Bakersfield, the car would break down. 6, told the guys that they left behind with the car to go get it fixed, and if and when they get it fixed, go find them and take them the rest of the way. 7, the whole band would hitchhike all the way down I-5 until they finally got a ride from a trucker who apparently was a speed fanatic. Not driving speed, a speed fanatic as in the drug. That guy took them all the way from Bakersfield to roughly around Eugene, Oregon. 7, because of them having to hitchhike and not really having their equipment, they ditched all the other venues that they were going to play at. Number 8 or 9, I don't really care at this point. They finally get another ride from Oregon all the way to where they need to be in Seattle. They got there the day before they played at Guerrilla Gardens. Guns N' Roses would play, Slash says, their first gig at Guerrilla Gardens. After they played at Guerrilla Gardens, the owner, I guess, which was some Russian guy, was not willing to pay them the $100. Basically told them, I'm not paying you guys. Duff went back into the office and apparently got into it with them. I think he scared the guy a little bit. At least that's what he said. He scared the guy a little bit. And the guy
guy ended up finally paying him $100. Now, I know what you're thinking. $100 is not a lot of money split between 5 people. But I'll tell you right now, this is the mid-'80s. Money went much further back then. From there, a very good friend, a very, very, very good friend, took them all the way from Seattle back to LA. Whew, that's a lot. Now, I don't think Guns N' Roses ever called it the Hell Tour, but most of their fans call it the Hell Tour. We will consider and refer to that as the Hell Tour from this point of the video on. With both Slash and Duff said, even though the Hell Tour was not very successful, if you were to spend that many nights hitchhiking just to get to one gig, that showed dedication. That showed strength in the band. That showed loyalty. And that is why the Hell Tour was actually very successful.
Soon after the Hell Tour, Slash would land himself a job at a newsstand. Oddly enough, it was on the same corner where he used to take guitar lessons over here on Fairfax Avenue and Santa Monica Boulevard. Because the job had so much downtime, Slash was able to use the company phone to call around and do business for his band, Guns N' Roses. He would oftentimes call venues to set up shows for them. On top of that, he would call around to smaller newspapers that were willing to interview the band. Slash would get them shows in some of the best venues in West Hollywood. Places like the Whiskey A Go-Go, the Roxy, and the Rainbow Bar and Grill. Things were working out pretty good for Slash because as long as he was working at the newsstand, he was able to stay for free at one of his manager's houses. Unfortunately, after a long night of drinking heavily with Steven Adler while they watched some live music, Slash woke up late the next day and ran to work. As soon as he got there, he noticed his main boss was already there and he was instantly fired, losing his crash pad at his manager's house, and of course losing the access to the phone.
This right here behind me is a practice space that Guns N' Roses rented shortly after they came back from the Hell Tour on the West Coast. Now, cops were not really a problem. Noise problems were not a problem as long as all the shops were closed. Cops never bothered them.
Now, Slash says that this is a 12 feet by 12 feet room, barely a car garage. And he said there was a roll-up gate. And as you can see, there's a roll-up gate. He says that there was a bathroom just a few feet away from the practice space.
And right next door here was another space that another local LA band was using. Now, because most of the guys didn't have a home of their own, a lot of them stayed at girlfriends' houses, good friends' houses, crashed on couches, all kinds of stuff. But once they moved their equipment into here, Slash says that him and Axl became permanent residents here. Now, although other bandmates did stay here, it was mostly Axl and Slash that stayed here every night. Now, even though this was not the Hell House, it did have its own nickname once Axl and Slash moved in. It was called
Sunset and Gardner Hotel and Villas.
That was the nickname that Slash and Axl gave this place, never called the Hell House.
Now, the reasoning behind the name is quite simple, actually. It was off of Sunset Boulevard down Gardner Street. And as far as the hotel and villas, that's because a lot of people would stay the night.
We will get into where the real Hell House was later in this video. Now, according to Slash, Izzy and Duff found some plywood around the back, and they actually built a very high bunk bed, basically. Now, apparently how it worked is the bunk bed was above all of the equipment, all the band equipment, and they would practice underneath. Now, a lot of Appetite for Destruction was actually written right behind these walls. Also, parts of Use Your Illusion too. They wrote a lot of the songs for Use Your Illusion as well as they were practicing here. Now after every night of practice, apparently this place turned into a huge party destination for a lot of people. Now these parties were wild. They would basically have just tons of people out here in this parking lot right here. Sometime the other band would join in, but Slash and Duff both say that they feel like they were probably a bit much for that band, so they kind of stopped going to the parties. But a lot of the parties would just happen right here in this parking lot. Now in both Duff's and Slash's book, they mention that everything was okay here. Everything was out in the open, and we're talking sex, drugs, and rock and roll right in front of everybody. It got wild sometimes to the point where some people just couldn't take it. So let's talk about a part that is a little more of a touchy subject, especially for YouTube, so I'm going to try to keep it as friendly as I can. Thank you, guy, for making noise. So what ended this crazy party pad? What was the thing that stopped it? Well, apparently a wild party happened, and Axel ended up sleeping with a girl, so we're gonna keep it clean, right? And the next morning she woke up and she was screaming and just absolutely losing it, they say. Slash tried to calm her down. Axel told her to go home. Just go home. You're not wanted here. Well, she did. She went home, and it turns out that she was an underage girl. So the family of that girl ended up pressing charges against both Axel and Slash. Now Slash was like, "What? I didn't do anything," and it's true, he didn't. But for whatever reason, they came after both of them.
Now, Slash says that Steve Adler was the only one at the rehearsal space when cops came and broke down the door. The police asked Steven where Axel and Slash were, and they actually even threatened to arrest him if he didn't say.
Apparently, the cops explained it to him, and then the cops proceeded to tear up this place like they were looking for something. They threw the equipment all over the place, ruining a lot of the equipment. I mean, they trashed it like a hurricane, went through this room, and by the time they left, it was a wreck. Duff went and called both Slash and Axel and told them, "Stay away from here. The cops are after you guys." And here's why. Slash ended up staying with Duff, which was an apartment not too far from here, apparently. And Axel stayed in Orange County with a girlfriend or with a woman. I don't know. Now, both Slash and Axel were in big trouble. But
now, a week after the lawsuit was filed,
they actually dropped charges against Slash. Which makes sense because Slash had no real part in this other than just being there at the time it happened. Now, Axl Rose, on the other hand, he did have to go to court. He had to buy a suit, he had to show up to court, and he, had to go through a whole day of trial. By the end of the trial, however, apparently the lawsuit was dropped against Axl as well. So apparently they both were free men now. Now, how do we know this is the exact spot? How do we know this? Because Slash mentions in his book that the place was right behind a guitar center. Also, Slash says above the Sunset and Garden Hotel and Villas was a playground for a school. And right up here, you can see this is a playground to the school. Now this place is called Bad Ladder, and it's a studio. It's basically for producers who are making movies, and they give you all the power to produce your movies right behind these walls. Isn't that great?
Most of the things that I just said about the Gardner rehearsal space was out of Slash's book, but Duff McKagan's book had some different takes, so let's go over some of those. First of all, Duff said that there was no bathroom at all. Where they would relieve themselves, your guess is as good as mine. He also mentioned that most of the band would stay overnight almost every night, which is a bit different from what Slash says. He also mentions that Izzy was selling some Mr. Brownstone out of the rehearsal space. Another thing that differs is that Duff says that the cops would non-stop harass them. Even on nights that they didn't have parties, the cops would still show up and give them a bunch of shit. One last thing worth mentioning is he said that him and Izzy went down to Home Depot to get the lumber to build the loft that most of them would sleep on.
I want to show you guys the layout of the neighborhood because a lot of these places throughout both Duff's and Slash's book are brought up. I kind of want to point out some of these places because some of them are actually pretty important to the lore of Guns N' Roses, so let's go to it. Now as we cross the street here, right here is where a Mesa Boogie shop was, and it was brought up in, I believe, both books. And you could buy amps and guitars and stuff like that. So that was this place right here. Now it since has closed and became Death Noodle's Comedy Club, which I'm not even sure it's that anymore either. Looks pretty empty, looks pretty unused these days. Now turning to our left, right over here, is the El Compadre restaurant. That was brought up in both Slash's and Duff's book, but Duff seems to go a little more into detail. Now these are his words, not mine. I'm not saying this about this restaurant, so these are not my words, but Duff says that the El Compadre restaurant was dark, and it wasn't dark like candlelit dark, it was just straight up dark in there.
Now, according to Duff, he said that the darkness allowed for discreet sexual favors and drug use without the restaurant having any clue of what was going on.
And apparently they had pretty good margaritas and stuff like that, so the band would oftentimes go in there and get pretty hammered. Now right across the street from here is the Guitar Center. Now this Guitar Center is the one that's brought up to show where the practice space was. They oftentimes bring up this Guitar Center to kind of give people ideas, or give people the idea of where their practice space was. Now left to the El Compadre restaurant from here, way down there is 7th Veil. Now, it's not that far, but my fat ass doesn't feel like walking that far right now. So we're gonna get back in the car and we're gonna go on down there. And so right here behind me is the 7th Veil. Now this was brought up both in Slash and Duff's book. I know I keep saying that, but it just was. And so I want to make sure it's very clear that they both talk about this place. Now this is obviously a strip club, and this is not only a Guns N' Roses hangout, but if you look at the sign here, what does it say? Girls, girls, girls. Who came out with a song by the name, and album by the name of Girls, Girls, Girls? Motley Crue. That's right, Motley Crue came out with a song on their album titled Girls, 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 song titled Girls, 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 and they bring up the 7th Veil, the 7th Veil in their song. So it's one of the strip clubs they bring up. This place was very important to Guns N' Roses because this is a place where they met a lot of girls, and this is a place where they would meet a lot of girls that like to party. And I mean, if you look like a rock star, you came in here, you were gonna get laid, okay? So this was a place that they met a lot of girls, became friends with them. A lot of them were girlfriends at times here and there. But
they also would crash at a lot of these girls' houses. Gosh, that's a hard thing to say, huh? On a Sunday morning anyway. But yeah, so this is the place where Guns N' Roses would find a lot of friends and, you know, people to have fun with and party with. Also, they actually hired a lot of these girls to dance on the stage while they performed all throughout LA and wherever they performed. So yeah, very tied to this place, Seventh Veil. So it was somewhere down here on Palm Avenue here off of Sunset Boulevard that Slash mentions that they would visit quite a bit because there were some, not my words, his words, pretty sleazy women that lived down here. And, well, they would go and party with them oftentimes. And it was somewhere down Palm Avenue here that they started singing about Night Train, because they all had a bottle of Night Train. And there was a whole band, by the way.
As they walked down the street, one of them yelled out, "I'm on the night train." And Axl would jump in with, "I love that stuff." And they continued doing that throughout the walk, pretty much coming up with the full lyrics of Night Train.
Once they got back to the practice space, Axl wrote down the lyrics that he could remember, and that became Night Train. We are back at the Troubadour because, like I said, Guns N' Roses owes a lot of gratitude to the Troubadour. They are basically one of their main venues. The reason why we're back this time is because...
Well, it's because Guns N' Roses' hard work and dedication paid off. Because on March 25th, 1986, Guns N' Roses were signed to Geffen Records. A talent scout by the name of Tom Zutaut went into the Troubadour to watch Guns N' Roses. He liked him so much that he told all the other talent scouts that Guns N' Roses were terrible and they sucked. That was only because he wanted to sign them to the label he worked for, Geffen Records. And the plan worked. After Geffen signed Guns N' Roses, they told Guns N' Roses to not play out anymore, just to lay low. They gave him a pretty good chunk of upfront money and told him to go practice and get ready to record an album. Now, according to Slash, in between the time that they were signed and the time that they recorded Appetite for Destruction was over a year. They had a lot of money and not too much to do. This is the time when half of the band starts dancing with Mr. Brownstone.
Over here on La Cienega Boulevard and Fountain Avenue, right behind me here is an apartment. This is an apartment Slash, Izzy, Axl, and Steven would rent. Now, clearly they had more money after they were signed with Geffen Records. They didn't have the money that they would have after their first album.
But clearly the record label gave them enough upfront money to live much more comfortably.
Even though they had a lot more money, it was around this time that they all started realizing that they were getting more and more addicted to Mr. Brownstone, essentially. Slash and Izzy were known to be pretty heavily into it. Steven was also, but I believe that it was Slash and Izzy that would kind of take off onto the side and do their drugs. Axl, on the other hand, was, although dabbled in all the stuff, he's not like far from being innocent. I don't think he was ever quite as addicted as the other guys. Axl's main problem was Axl because he had such a roller coaster of an attitude. But other than that, this is kind of around the time they started realizing they were leaning much more heavily towards Mr. Brownstone. That was a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. 2 people would take a room and the other 2 would take the other room. So it's probably like Axl and Slash and then Steven and Izzy in the other one. And for whatever reason, after 3 months, they got an eviction notice
probably partying too hard and staying up too late, probably a noise thing, whatever it was. They did get an eviction notice and they all had to eventually move out. Now, how do I know this is the place? While Slash never gives an exact address, he does describe the building, and he says it's on Fountain Avenue and La Cienega Boulevard, and he says it's the apartment that's facing the intersection. Now, this apartment is facing the intersection. As you can see, there's a big window right there that faces the intersection, and it's the only building that really faces the intersection like this building. And he says that there's a big bay window. Now, this is not technically a bay window. Maybe Slash doesn't quite know what a bay window is, but it certainly does resemble a bay window. So that's how I know this is the apartment that they rented. Now, of course, if you wanted to come out here and see the apartment complex that 4 of them would rent, it's out here on Fountain Avenue and La Cienega Avenue, and it's in West Hollywood. This is not the Hell House. Now, as mentioned previously in the video before, this is not the Hell House. This here is the Hell House. So just to nip this in the bud real quick, this house was not even brought up by anyone or any of my research other than people online calling this the Hell House. Now, the only thing I can find worth mentioning is that Guns N' Roses took a photo in front of a window on the porch at this house. So clearly they knew somebody here. It was probably a crash pad for a lot of them because they didn't have places to stay. But other than them taking a photo, a couple of photos, a few photos in front of this house, it doesn't seem like it's that significant to the lore of Guns N' Roses. Going by Slash's book, let's go over why I'm fairly certain this is the Hell House. In his book, it says it's just south of Sunset on Poinsettia. He also said that it was the second to the last structure on the block. It was also a house surrounded by apartment buildings. The house had 3 bedrooms along one end from the front to the back, meaning the front of the house was not very wide. The house from the front to the back was a long house, which fits the description of this place. Another description he gives is the lawn sloped up so that it looked like it was on the hill. Now, this was circa 1986, so it looks like since then they have taken out the lawn. The house definitely looks like it's kind of on a hill. Now, the Hell House wasn't mentioned until well after the practice space, the place that a lot of people are calling the Hell House now. Slash and Izzy and Steve were not really addicted to heroin until around the time they were signed with Griffin Records. This is roughly around 1986-ish. And it was around that time that Slash starts talking about the Hell House. Now, Slash and everybody had a little bit of money up front after being signed, so they all had their money. But about this time, Slash kind of burns through his money. A lot of the guys burn through their money due to their addiction to drugs. The Hell House was a place that Slash was a permanent resident for a while. And according to him in his book, that he was the only one that was a permanent resident. Having said that, a lot of the other band members also stayed the night there. I guess I should probably mention at this time that Axl and Duff were not addicted to heroin like Izzy, Slash, and Steven. Duff mentions in his book that he was on the road to being addicted, but after he has witnessed so many good friends of his dying from overdosing, he quit. There's a house here that's surrounded by apartments, but I can't say that this is it.
Now I have some notes on my phone, and it says Slash says that the Hell House was rented by Wes Arkeen and a bunch of his Harley Davidson friends. Now Wes Arkeen was kind of thought of as the sixth member of Guns N' Roses. He helped them write a lot of their songs, including It's So Easy. He was also a guy that helped them out a lot with money and places to stay. Slash always says he never understood how he got money, but he always seemed to have money. Now it was called the Hell House because it was pretty much open for anything you wanted to do. Basically, if you wanted to find a spot on the floor in the kitchen, you could find a spot on the floor in the kitchen and do drugs. If you wanted to sleep on the couch, you could sleep on the couch. If you wanted to get it on with somebody, you could also do that. Everything was open for you to do anything except for a few rooms. He mentions that there's a room at the back of the house where one of the biker guys and his wife lived, and that was a place you did not enter. And apparently even Wes never entered that place. There was another room that was set up
As a recording studio.
Now, this is at the end of this block here, about the second or third structure. This is the only place I could come to the conclusion that could be the Hell House. So, possible Hell House, everybody. Now, this is a possible contender for the Hell House. It's an empty lot now. You know, this happened in, like I said, multiple times, 1986. So, I don't know, maybe they tore down the house. Now it is surrounded by apartments like Slash described. But the one thing that Slash described is that it was at the end of the block, like the second structure near the end of the block, which makes the other house more of a contender. Whatever, I don't know. It's still a little bit of a mystery. All I know is the Hell House is over here off of Sunset down Poinsettia Place. Now right behind me here is a barbed wire fence gate, very heavy duty gate, but behind this gate here is also some kind of clinic of some sort for adults. But back in 1986, this used to be a recording studio.
The Rumbo Studio in Los Angeles, Canoga Park, opened in 1979 and was built and owned by Daryl Dragon, the captain from the musical duo Captain and Tennille.
This is where Guns N' Roses would come out and record one of my favorite rock albums, Appetite for Destruction. Now, Appetite for Destruction came out in the summer of 1987. However, the album did not really take off for just about a whole year. In fact, one of my favorite stories, I want to say I heard it from Slash, that the whole band was sitting on a tour bus, beat down and tired, and Duff gets on the bus and tells everybody, "Welcome to the Jungle is at number 1. Welcome to the Jungle." And I remember seeing that on MTV. Remember MTV, kids? Remember that? But when Sweet Child O' Mine came out, when that became a single and that became a hit, that actually surprised the whole band. They never thought that Sweet Child O' Mine was the song that would do it, but that's the song that blew that album up, Appetite for Destruction. That's the song, gained them a big audience, and that album topped number 1 for quite some time. Now, even though they recorded most of Appetite for Destruction right behind me, Slash was not happy with his guitar sound. He wasn't happy with any of it. He didn't like his setup. So he actually recorded all the guitar parts over again at another studio. And we're gonna head over there right now. Let's go check that studio, which is no longer a studio, but let's go. But first, if you wanted to come out and check out what used to be Rumble Records, it's at 20215 Satakoy Street here in Los Angeles. Just for the record, even though this is Los Angeles, it's also known as Canoga Park, and it's part of the Valley.
All right, now we're on Glenwood Place. We're in Burbank, California, and right behind me here is where a studio by the name of Take One used to be. This is where Slash would go to re-record his guitar parts for Appetite for Destruction. Now, he was not happy with the sound of his guitar. He wasn't happy with the sound of the amp, and so he kind of arranged to get better equipment with Geffen Records. They obliged and got him all the stuff that he needed, because of course they want to make the money off of this album. So after he got all that, this is where he would go. Take One Studios. Now, if you wanted to check this place out, it is 619 Glenwood Place, Burbank, California. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we reached the end of this video. This is the cutoff point. Plus, my computer is running out of room. That's how big this video is. It took me a long time to do this, a lot of research. So I'd appreciate it if you guys, if you watched it all the way up to this point, give me a like, share this video out, share it with anybody that is a Guns N' Roses fan or a pop culture fan in any form or fashion.
And also, if you like this video here, you'll also like this video over here or this video right here.
But thank you so much for watching, and please, everybody, have a wonderful time. Thank you very much for watching, and take care.